Tonight on Gridiron Glory, the regional semifinals in Divisions 3 and 5. We'll see how Sheridan, Jackson, Wheelersburg, and more fared. Plus, in-depth breakdowns on tomorrow's games in Divisions 6 and 7. And don't miss our game of the week, the SOC champs facing off with the OVC champs. The stakes are high as ever.
So don't touch that remote. Gridiron Glory starts right now.
Spots in the regional finals are on the line this weekend. Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jake Amata, along with senior reporters Jack Demler and Chloe G. Workman. And guys, it's time to find out who's the best of the best.
And Mata, I can't wait for all of the action we're going to see tonight. On the show, we have 4 regional semifinal games out of regions 11 and 19, and we're going to wrap things up with our game of the week featuring a coach who is facing his alma mater.
And Chloe will also talk to reporters out of regions 23 and 27 about 4 crucial Saturday games to see what lies ahead for these 8 teams.
And guys, we'll also take a look throughout the night at the 5 Player of the Year finalists. So keep your eyes and ears open to see how they're impacting this weekend's games. But we start the night in Division 3 with a clash between teams that haven't lost since August. MSL reporter Maria Manessi was on the scene for Sheridan versus Bloom-Carroll.
Thanks, Mata. These teams both put up impressive performances last week, but not in the ways you might have expected. The Bulldogs had their lowest scoring win of the season, but their defense continued to impress with 3 interceptions in the 20-7 win over Tri-Valley. As for Sheridan, they're a team with a defensive identity, and they put up their highest scoring game of the year with a beatdown on Washington Courthouse, 60-34. Both teams are stepping up on both sides of the ball when it matters most. While the Bulldogs have held opponents below 14 points 9 times this year, the Generals have scored 14 or more points in every game. But early on, neither team really got things going. A 9-minute opening drive for the Bulldogs, yes, you heard that right, 9 minutes, ended with the team settling for a field goal. A Jet Jones pick 6 followed up with a penalty, and the Bulldogs took over at their own 22-yard line. And that key interception was followed up by guess who? No other than Andrew Marshall, straight to the house. It's 10-0 going into the half. Out of the locker room, the Generals looked to have found light on offense, but the Bulldogs forced a fumble. Later, Ethan Thanthanabong decides he's going to keep the ball and answers with a TD of his own. Bulldogs up 17-0. The Generals continue to try and make magic on offense, but Reed Packer's pass is picked off by Andrew Marshall. Later, the Generals make things interesting and get on the board with a 78-yard bomb. But 2 more turnovers and a failed onside kick and had the Bulldogs running away with a 17-7 victory. Mata, Bloom-Carroll was locked in on defense the entire first half.
Maria, you're right. It's not often we see Sheridan held to just 7 points. But to understand what went wrong fully, we need to talk to someone who was at the game. MVL reporter Bryce Tinson joins us live from Lancaster, and he's got the answers.
Guys, this might have been a 10-point game at the half, but it still felt in reach. It was just a few key things from Sheridan that really kept them from making this a game in the end. I came up with my 3 keys to victory for the Generals before this game. Stay ahead of schedule on offense. Focus on stopping the Bloom rushing attack, and most importantly, nullify Andrew Marshall.
Bryce, were they able to check all 3 of those boxes?
Well, Mata, I would give them a 1 out of 3. They did a fantastic job stopping the Bulldog ground game, holding them to just 3 or 4 yards of carry with really no huge chunk plays to be had. As for the other 2 keys, it was a struggle. The offense was playing behind the sticks all game long, which led to obvious passing situations, ultimately 3 picks. As for Andrew Marshall, they struggled to stop him. He was all over the place, blowing up play after play. But even with the loss, head coach Paul Culver still loves the way his guys finished the game.
I listened to my dad coach for 40 years, and there were 2 words that he talked about all the time: leadership and toughness, leadership and toughness, leadership and toughness. And you can't bottle those. You can't, there are no scripts. There's nothing that like a formula, but our kids have it. And you saw that tonight.
The Sheridan offense scored 60 points last week, but we're held to just 7 this week. Maria, what did Bloom do defensively?
Mata, Bloom-Carroll's defense had 4 turnovers, and their defense continues to play lights out. The Generals tried to run the ball, but just couldn't find holes and ways to get around the Bulldogs.
That's back-to-back weeks of defensive struggles for the Generals, and I would credit this one more to Bloom-Carroll's rushing attack.
Mata, despite weather conditions, the Bulldog running backs found openings to move down the field. They converted on multiple third and even a few fourth downs. It was huge for them to do so and keep the Generals off the field.
You got to see a Player of the Year candidate tonight. What was Marshall's impact like?
Marshall is one of those guys that is scary for opposing offenses to face. He knows exactly where he needs to be at all times. With 1 touchdown, an interception, and multiple key stops, this comes at no surprise. If he continues to play like this, they should have no problem getting back to their 3rd straight semis.
Maria, thanks for the great work as always, and Bryce, get back to Athens safe. With the win for the Bulldogs, they advanced to their 5th straight regional final game, but it's their first time making it there in Division III. They made the move this offseason because of that competition has been tougher than ever. That continues next week when they take on the winner of Jackson versus Bishop Watterson. And Zach Mothersbaugh was there to find out which team got the opportunity to tame the Bulldogs.
Mata, in week 7, Granville took on Bishop Watterson or Jackson took on Granville and beat them 41-7. And then Bishop Watterson took them on in week 7 and beat them by just 1 point. Granville was the 3rd team in a row that Jackson held to only 7 points. Now, the Ironman defense turns their focus to Zach Weber. After finishing below 150 yards in the regular season, Weber exploded onto the scene in the playoffs with 338 yards and 7 touchdowns. But matching him on the offensive side of the ball for Jackson, Cade Wolford. Wolford has hung some impressive numbers of his own so far, topping 300 yards and 6 touchdowns in the 2 postseason games. And in this dreary weather, it looks like it's going to be those 2 backs that run the show. It starts in Wolford's favor. Jackson is able to keep the ball on the ground and drive the length of the field before Cade Wolford finds the edge and gets in the end zone from 13 out. But Bishop Watterson answers with a long drive that includes this run from Zach Weber that set the Eagles up, and an A.J. McCann sneak makes the score 8-7. And the Eagles would go into the half up 6, but that would change fast as Ryan Rodzinski finds a hole in the opening kick return of the second half. And looking like he was going to take one to the house earlier, he takes this one 90 yards to the end zone. Now down 8 with 1 drive left, the Ironmen needing the 2-point conversion. They have winners drop back, and he just can't connect with Eli Browerman. And the Ironman season ends 24-22, but Coach Hall was impressed with the team's fight.
It was a tough loss, but I tell you, I was so proud of our kids, so proud of our seniors. You know, it could have easily cashed it in at 21-7. You know, give up that kickoff in the opening, the opening play in the 3rd quarter. We just broke our backs, but we able to come back. You know, get that stop on a 4th down or 3rd down and make them kick a field goal because they score a touchdown. The game's over with at that point. You know, caused them to kick a field goal. Our offense came right down and scored. Had the 2-point play. We already planned on doing that. And right going in the 4th quarter, I told Jacob when there was a quarterback, I said, this is the play we're going to run on the 2-point play when we score, and we did, and we had it. You know, we just had it. You know, couldn't make a play, but again, I was so proud of our kids and the way they played. That's a great Watterson team. We knew that going in. They're 11-1 for a reason. 2 great teams playing. You know, both. It was a clean game, very little penalties, but very proud of our kids.
Zach, even though the Ironmen struggled defensively, they were able to put together drives when they needed to. What worked for them?
Well, what worked for them was the outside runs. They had to have winners lined up with an empty formation, and then they had Wolford and Browerman lined up next to him, and they would run a jet sweep that would get them to the outside. Now, you see Bishop Watterson's number 76, Cole Redd. He was the reason they had to do all that. He is so unstoppable on that side. I don't know how you run against him. I really don't. They had 192 rushing yards, and every single one of those rushing yards seemed like it came on the outside because Cole Redd stopped everything.
And that's a tough end for the 2 seed. How does this team translate to next year?
Well, Cade Wolford, he's gonna be back, but they're gonna lose a lot of receiving threats and GG Player of the Year candidate Jacob Winters.
And Zach, while it's a tough end for the Ironmen, the impact that this team has on its community will continue to resonate.
Absolutely, Mata. The community does so much to lift these players up, and for one player, that helps spark a need to give back.
Junior Ethan Crabtree didn't know if he'd ever be able to kick for the Ironmen again.
Just one of the hardest things through this whole injury has been trying not to get stuck in a position where I feel like giving up or feel like, hey, I'm done for the rest of my life.
But Crabtree kept pushing forward through his creation of Kicks for Coats, a non-profit organization where Crabtree donates 1 coat to a kid in Jackson for every field goal, extra point, and touchback he accrues. He wanted to give back to the Jackson community, the same community that shows passion and support for the local sports teams and every player involved.
And then when he had his injury and so many people rallied around him, the community really supported him at that time, and I think that made it even more of a commitment to him that he needed to give back.
But Crabtree's main anchor to this team are the young kickers he gets to mentor, including Jackson's new starter, Thatcher Brown.
he's taught me to not really give up on the game. Just when I get here, he's always super excited. He gets my momentum going. He keeps me wanting to come back and back to practice.
And head coach Andy Hall has noticed the drive he has to stay with the team and work to get back.
I think his resilience really showed that he was not going to give up. He's coming out here every day working, doing what he was allowed to do.
Through all this, though, Crabtree has been looking forward to his return to the field, and just recently, he's been cleared to play his senior season.
Just getting in a little bit to kick when I can, just at practices or when I'm on my own time. I live for it. It's my favorite thing to do.
From Gridiron Glory, I'm Zach Mothersbaugh.
Bishop Watterson now finds themselves matched up against the dominant defense of Bloom-Carroll, who we saw hold the Generals to their lowest score of the season. A key matchup to keep an eye out for is the Eagles running back Zach Weber going up against Andrew Marshall. Game of the week and the rest of the action in Region 19 is still ahead, but for now, let's preview the Saturday action in Division 6 and 7.
And we're going to start things off in Region 23, and both games featured teams from the OVAC, covered by reporter Grayson Wolf. And Grayson, you've seen these teams all season long.
Yeah, Fort Frye and Bellaire are set up on a collision course for a rematch in the regional final. But first, they take on two teams that Jack and Chloe, you guys cover closely. Let's start with Jack. The Buckeyes are gearing up to face one of the most well-balanced teams they have seen this season and their toughest opponent yet in the Region 23.
Grayson, Nelsonville-York has a tall task ahead as a Bellaire team that has outscored opponents 96-43 in the first two rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, and for the Big Red offense, it starts with the running game. Braden Roth and Drew White have been the two guys. They've combined for over 1,000 yards this season and 13 touchdowns. But don't let that running game fool you, because senior quarterback Jake Hetherington can take the top off of any defense. He'll be looking for his main man, Ray Pettigrew, who's his wide receiver 1. But Jack, they also line him up in the backfield, which is a good idea because he's going to be the best athlete on the field tomorrow night.
Grayson, it's hard to argue with you there. Bellaire looks to be a well-balanced offense, but the Buckeyes have played two well-balanced teams so far in this postseason, and that defense has not allowed 200 yards in either of their playoff games. And a big reason for that is because of this man right here, TVC Ohio Defensive Player of the Year, Leighton Logie. He's a smart player who covers a wide range from the field. He will need to have a standout performance if the Buckeyes want any chance to slow down and beat the Bellaire Big Red.
Yeah, but Jack, that's a lot easier said than done, because not only does this Bellaire offense have a lot of speed, their offense usually also controls the pace of the game. In their 12 games this season, they have led in time of possession in 7 of them.
Grayson, we know Bellaire will control the clock this game. So for NY, that means every chance they get on offense, they need to maximize every opportunity. In other words, that means they need to go score for score to beat the Bellaire Big Red offense.
Yeah, Jack, it'll be interesting to see if the Buckeyes can keep up with that Big Red offense. But moving over to the other side of the bracket, Fort Frye find themselves matched up against a top running back in the 7-4-0.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that one, Grayson. I mean, Chase Hall has been that make it or break it man for Cole Grove. He has 2,850 yards on the season, and paired with 48 touchdowns, no one has been able to stop him yet. But if Colgrove wants to win, they're going to have to find ways to capitalize on him. He has proven he can score a lot of touchdowns. I mean, he scored 10 in the last 2 games alone. He also gets things done on defense. He has 150 tackles on the season.
Yeah, and Fort Frye will need to match aggression with aggression. And that Fort Frye defense has been able to do that this season, as they've held their opponents to just 18 points per game. In the last 2 weeks of the playoffs, they've given up just 26 points total. 2 guys that will be tasked at taking down Hall again and again are defensive lineman Caleb Briggs and linebacker Zayden Huck. Those two have combined for over 200 tackles and 41 tackles for loss this season. And you want to take it through the air against this Cadet defense? Braxton Brown says not so fast. He's turned that Fort Frye secondary into an absolute no-fly zone and has 8 interceptions this season.
Now, if Colgrove wants to take this one, they're going to have to better prepare themselves for that onside kick. They allowed West Jefferson to recover 4 straight. It was shown that they struggle with that. So, I mean, West Jefferson almost won on that. Fort Frye has probably been doing their homework, and they're probably going to try to capitalize on that.
Yeah, and this Fort Frye offense might be the best we've seen in years. Last week against Shenandoah, they scored 71 points, which is the first time they have done that in the 21st century. Either way, this will be the end of the line for either Chase Hall's historic year or another dominant season for Fort Frye.
And now, Grayson, there are 2 more OVAC teams that are playing on Saturday down in Division 7.
Yeah, that's right, Jack. It's a battle between 2 one-loss teams, River and Caldwell. River brings in their offense that averages 46 points per game against a Caldwell defense that has pitched 5 shutouts this season. And the winner of that one will take on a fellow team from the 7-4-0.
Yeah, thanks, Grayson. Newark Catholic taking on Waterford in a battle between the LCL Buckeye and the TVC Hawking champions. It's one of the most daunting tasks of the year for Waterford, but the Green Wave offense they're up against battling injuries. LCL reporter Ethan Sargent and TVC reporter Cameron Nupp saw how both these teams were preparing.
Yeah, thanks, Mata. While Newark Catholic may be the top seed, the Wildcats are fired up and show that they're ready for the challenge.
You're right, Cam, but the Green Wave are the defending regional champs, and they're on a mission to reclaim their throne once again. And they have been washing over opponents in 2022, but they've done it without star running back Mason Hackett, who's been out for their last 3 games. But the offense has remained a strength in Hackett's absence, as sophomore quarterback Miller Hutchinson and sophomore running back Mikey Hess have led the way. But the Green Wave have been lights out on defense. Get this, Cam. Newark Catholic in those 3 games without Hackett have not allowed a single point. And the cherry on top, Hackett is back in practice this week in preparation for this highly anticipated matchup. And while he may not be fully at 100%, he may be needed more than ever against a ferocious Wildcats defense. He broke down how he's been working on making his comeback.
A person's helmet came inside of my knee and it buckled and I felt it pop. But I finished the rest of the game and then I could feel something was wrong, so then I went and got it checked out. I did 3 long weeks of PT and get ready for the rest of the postseason. So I'm feeling good, ready to get out there and work.
We're going to start integrating him back. He's done a tremendous job, right? Our athletic trainer, there's other physical therapists that he's been working with have just done a tremendous job and making sure that we're taking advantage of each and every day to make sure that we're getting healthy.
Newark Catholic is ready to go for this one, and Cam, Waterford is going to have to play their best football to compete.
Yeah, Ethan, you're right. It's going to be an uphill battle for Waterford, but you can't count these Wildcats out just yet. The Wildcats still boast the best player in the TVC Hawking in Jake Pantelidis, as well as his workhorse in the backfield, Dylan Taylor. To pull off the upset, these 2 offensive leaders will have to have career nights in order to shorten the game by keeping the ball away from Hackett and the Green Wave. In addition, they'll need to protect the football. The Wildcats turned it over on back-to-back possessions in their first game against Eastern. The Green Wave will not allow them to get away with these kinds of mistakes, but if they can clean up those early miscues, they'll have a chance. One thing's for sure, Coach Eric McCutcheon tells me that these Wildcats are hungry to stay alive.
They refuse to lose. I mean, that's kind of our motto. We're playing every snap as if it's your last. So, but they've been playing outstanding. I love this group. Where we've started from where we're at now on this 8-game winning streak, week 13, from starting to 1-3, we're super proud of what our team has accomplished, and we're not done. We want to keep rolling.
It's going to take all they've got, Ethan, but the Green Wave cannot sleep on this Waterford team.
Absolutely not, Cam. It's going to be a thrilling matchup, and either River or Caldwell awaits the winner of this one, but until then, we'll send it back over to you, Mata.
Thanks, guys, and if you want to get the results on these 4 games, follow along on our social media on Saturday night and through Sunday. We'll have game recaps, highlights, and photos on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And for in-depth coverage, check out our woub.org/gridiron. Now, back to tonight's action. Our last 2 games feature the 4 remaining teams in Region 19. First up, the Wheelersburg Pirates taking on the Harvest Prep Warriors. For more on that, we have reporter Aiden Crowley.
Mata, if the stakes aren't high enough at this point in the season, Berg was looking to avenge a 20-17 loss in last year's regional title. A title was in Wheelersburg's hands, up 17-7 at the half, but Harvest Prep stormed back to plunder the Pirates' hope in the second. I went to practice yesterday and spoke with Coach Woodward and the leaders of his squad. Here's what they had to say about the opportunity for redemption.
We want it back. Really like getting another shot at them and not make the same mistakes we did last year and learn from it.
Those guys understand, how close we were last year.
We have all the momentum, the ball's in our court. It's just what we're going to do with that ball.
It's playoffs. You have to play like there's, it doesn't matter to throw wins and losses out the window at this point.
Everyone, the fans, we're all going to show up and we're going to give them a show for sure.
And show up they did. The Berg always travels well. They've had front row seats to 114 points in the past 2 games for the Pirates. But Mata, this might be an even better Warriors team than last year. They're averaging 43 points per game this season, and early on they showed it. Running back Marcello Cox had back-to-back 40-plus yard touchdown runs, and Berg was in trouble early. But Mata, you can never count out these Pirates. Prep quarterback Aiden Rogers has trouble with the snap, and Wheelersburg falls on it at the 1. They punch it in on the next play, 13-7 Prep. Chaos continued after Wheelersburg recovered an onside kick. Ethan Glover gets his second score of the game from 12 yards out, 14-13 Pirates. The momentum doesn't stop there. Rogers on the keeper loses the ball again, and Eric Lattimore has an easy scoop and score. Blink and you missed it, Mata. 21-13 Berg at the half. Out of the locker room, it was deja vu for the Pirates. Rogers made up for his 2 fumbles in the first with 2 rushing touchdowns in the second to give Prep the lead again, 25-21. Berg had one more chance at a miracle, but it falls out of the hands of Caleb Arthur, and the Pirates fall short to the Warriors for the 2nd straight year. And Mata, this game was ridiculous. It was almost impossible to fit all that into a minute.
It seems like it, Aiden, and the weather tonight added to the chaos, didn't it?
Absolutely. If you're a Wheelersburg fan, you were licking your chops at this forecast because the rain mixed with the cold and the wind was perfect for this ground and pound team, and Prep struggled to hold on to the football with a couple turnovers.
But Aiden, everything has stalled for the Pirates in that second half, right?
Yeah, you're right, Mata. In my opinion, it felt like Berg got a little bit complacent in that second half. They were playing not to lose instead of to win. And I understand you want to keep Harvest Prep on the sideline, but you're not going to hold them to 0 points in the second half.
Okay, Aiden, and we have to talk about that final drive from Berg.
It was ridiculous, Mata. Every time you felt like Wheelersburg was out, they came back. We had a roughing the passer on 4th and 20. That hook and ladder, I mean, they left it all out on the field, but unfortunately, Jacob, it was the inconsistency in the passing game that led to this loss. And with the loss, Mata, obviously, they lose a lot of senior depth, especially on the offensive side of the football.
You're right. Thanks, Aiden. And now in Region 19, the Pirates came up short in this one, but they have nothing to hang their heads about for their 20th straight year finishing above 500. Harvest Prep gets back to the regional finals for the 2nd year in a row, and they'll be tested by the winner of Ironton versus Portsmouth West, our game of the week. And Chloe, you've watched Ironton all year long. They're special on the field, but they are special off the field as well.
Of course, Jacob, this rivalry goes much deeper than SOC versus OVC. Ironton's head coach Trevin Pendleton is a Portsmouth West alum, and while the Senators haven't beat the Tigers since 1990, this game serves as their best chance.
Outside of Brandon. Don't be in the middle. Traditionally, just throughout history. Something to you, you do the right things. Remember, we've said it all week. This is not David versus Goliath.
Pretty well, know the program and the history behind it. So, there's always that little added edge, but overall it's still a football game. Obviously, probably always knew that the day would come I'd finally get a coach against them, but, we approach every game like it's the same no matter who we're playing, and our ultimate goal that week is to go 1-0. Once the season gets rolling, it's all about this year and looking forward, not looking behind us. Well, it's happened in the past, whether it was last year or 2 weeks ago, really doesn't matter anymore. It's about getting better this week, going out and doing what we need to do to take care of business.
Line us hell, be West on 3. 1, 2, 3, be West. Whoa!
This is the first chance Trevin Pendleton has had to coach against his alma mater.
You're right about that, Jacob. And Morgan Anderson was there, and she's going to bring us the whole story.
Thanks, guys. If you were Ironton, this week of playoffs is like a blast from the past. Last year, the Wheelersburg, they bounced by Wheelersburg 14-17. So they're hoping to avoid that same fate tonight. But we can't discredit Portsmouth West. These guys have won 11 games in a row, including a win over the Berg. And the Senators, they can beat you in a bunch of different ways. Receiver Jeffrey Bishop is averaging 28 yards per catch, while senior Ryan Sissel runs for 7 yards per carry. Not to mention, they're under the direction of Todd Gilliland, who's on our Coach of the Year playlist. But tonight, we had a scoreless first quarter as the Tigers got their feet wet. So we'll go ahead and jump into the second. Amari Felder would notch one in on the 1-yard line, and soon after, Aiden Young would take one in for himself too. And this one, play of the night. Check this, Ty Perkins tips this one right into the clutches of Landon Wilson at the 1 during a Portsmouth West possession. Absolutely insane. Ending the half, your worst Southeast Ohio nightmare, Ty Perkins, with a 37-yard touchdown, 21-0 Ironton. Ryan Sissel scores West 1 and only of the night off of an interception just before. And just when you thought he was done, the man does it again. Ty Perkins to the only place he knows, the end zone. The Tigers would go on to keep their undefeated stripes with a win of 35-7, and boy, was it a battle.
The Tigers seem to be heating up right when it matters most, Morgan.
You're right. The Ironton Tigers have seemed unstoppable in the postseason so far.
Now, Morgan, we know that West can pull out on all stops. How did Ironton shut them down?
UB Tatum Carpenter and wide receiver Ty Perkins did what they do best, connect. The scary duo went for insane numbers. Carpenter recorded for 260 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns, 3 of those to Mr. Perkins.
And Gridiron fans know Ty Perkins is a beast. How'd he compete with West?
A beast he is. West had Perkins on an absolute lockdown in the first quarter, keeping it scoreless. But after that, Ironton changed their tempo into a passing attack, allowing them to use Perkins for quick outside routes instead of deep, wide passes. We talked to Perkins for what he had to say for it.
Me and Tatum's connection, it was a lot of hours during the summer, you know, every single day. We work on it in practice every single day. Even on defensive practice, we'll stay after and throw. He's like a brother to me. We know what we think at the same time, no matter what.
You're absolutely
the Ironton
right.
takes on the reigning regional champs Harvest Prep next week, but they're going to have to light up the scoreboard if they want to take down the Warriors.
You're absolutely right, Morgan. Thanks for the great work, and get home safe. The high-powered Ironton offense is now pinned against a unit that may be able to keep up with them. The Warriors are averaging 41 points through 13 games this year, so Trevor Carter and company will need to show up big because nobody has been able to outrun the Warriors. That's all the action for tonight, and with our hour-long season finale coming up next week, Jack, tell us what to expect.
Jacob, 3 weeks ago, we announced our watch list for Gridiron Glory Coach of the Year. First, let's check in and see where these guys are now and what they have accomplished so far this season.
Now, we just heard about Portsmouth West coach Todd Gilliland, and he is the first on our list. Gilliland has built himself quite a resume this season after beating Wheelersburg and taking the SOC2 for the first time since 2008. And despite tonight's loss, he still took them to their first regional semifinals since 2017 with wins over Minford and Columbus Academy.
Next on our list is Paul Culver III from Sheridan. Culver and the Generals climbed a mountain of adversity this year. The team lost a lot of contributors in the offseason, and against all odds, they still won the MVL title. He's accomplished all this in his first season with the passing of his father and legendary Sheridan coach, Paul Culver Jr.
Now, Kevin Board has changed the culture of New Lex football since taking over in 2019. While they did unfortunately have a tough end of their season with losses to Sheridan in Week 10 and Bishop Hartley in first round of the playoffs, Coach Board did lead his team to their first MVL championship since 2004, as well as their first playoff appearance since 2008.
Darren Waters from Watkins Memorial saw his name make the list after leading the Warriors to their first winning record since 2015 and their first conference title since 2006. However, their season was cut short after losing to Big Walnut in the regional quarterfinals.
Next on our list is Zane Trey's head coach Heath Hinton. After he took over a 1-9 team in 2020, just 2 years later, he led them to a perfect season. He was named the SBC Coach of the Year and led the program to his first conference title since 2016. In the first week of the playoffs, they had a massive win over Clark Montessori, only before being knocked out in a heartbreaking loss to Madeira.
And finally, Eastern Eagles head coach Jason Jackson. Jackson created a new culture in Reedsville and led the Eagles to an 8-2 finish, their best since 2001. In the process, Jackson led Eastern to their first ever home playoff win, but in the quarterfinals, they couldn't get over the hump against the same team that beat them out for the TVC hockey title, the Waterford Wildcats.
And that's the lowdown on our Coach of the Year candidates. Our staff will nominate one of these leaders to win the trophy, but to find out who, you'll have to tune in to next week's season finale. Plus, we'll meet the 5 Player of the Year finalists you heard about tonight. If you haven't already voted for the winner, you've got until Monday to head over to woub.org/gridiron. And next week, we're excited to reveal this year's All-GG team. 50 of the top players from every team at every position will make our All-Star roster. And all that and more in our hour-long season finale next Friday night. You know where to find us at 11:30 p.m. right here on WOUB. But for now, we say goodbye. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to follow along with us on our social media over the weekend for highlights, video recaps, and more. And check out the Gridiron Glory podcast on WOUB Digital for breakdowns of our games. And remember, there's nothing better than Friday nights and Gridiron Glory.